The silence stretched, a suffocating blanket pressing down on Elara. 10 years. 10 years of living in a world swallowed by an unnatural quiet, a world where even the rustle of leaves could bring death. She crouched by the boarded-up window, peering out at the desolation that was once their backyard. Wild vines strangled the skeletal remains of their apple tree, and the jungle, encroaching on the edges of the city, seemed to hold its breath. Elara's younger brother, Matteo, shifted beside her, his bare feet silent on the threadbare rug. He was 7, born into this world of hushed whispers and furtive glances. Unlike Elara, he didn't remember the world before, the world of laughter and music, of clanging pots and honking cars. Their father, a gaunt man with haunted eyes, emerged from the shadows. He placed a finger to his lips, his calloused hand rough against Elara's cheek. Then, he pointed towards the back of the house, his face etched with worry. The signal was clear. The creatures were coming. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. The creatures. Those things out there, with their echolocation and razor-sharp claws, were the stuff of nightmares. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of the house, sent shivers down her spine. Matteo tugged on her sleeve, his large, dark eyes filled with a question Elara couldn't answer. No spoken words, not even a whimper. If the creatures heard them, it would be over. Their father, Silas, knelt by a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside, a small, battered box held their only hope, a sound suppressor cobbled together from scavenged parts. It wouldn't last long, but it was all they had. Silas pressed the box into Elara's hand, his touch lingering. Her fingers brushed against a worn inscription, "For Amelia." A silent tribute to their mother, lost 5 years ago to the creature's insatiable hunger. A guttural screech echoed from outside, closer now. Elara squeezed Matteo's hand, willing him to stay quiet. The floorboards creaked in response, and Elara flinched. But there was no time for fear. Silas grabbed a hunting knife, its gleam faint in the dim light. He gestured towards a narrow crawl space behind the fireplace. It was their only escape route. Elara knew what he was planning. It was a desperate gamble, one that might get Matteo and her out, but leave Silas behind. The thought was unbearable, but there was no other choice. She hoisted Matteo onto her back and crawled into the darkness, the stale air thick and suffocating. The scratching sounds grew louder, closer. Elara squeezed her eyes shut, praying to a god she no longer believed in. The tunnel was cramped and dusty, the silence broken only by their ragged breaths and the frantic pounding of Elara's heart. She pushed forward, guiding Matteo with whispers against his cheek. Every scrape of her clothes against the rough earth felt amplified in the suffocating darkness. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a small, dusty chamber. A faint sliver of moonlight filtered through a crack in the boarded-up window, illuminating a forgotten cache of supplies, canned goods, bottled water, and a single, flickering oil lamp. Elara fumbled with the lamp, its weak flame casting dancing shadows on the stone walls. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. A blood-curdling shriek tore through the silence, sending a fresh wave of terror through her. "They're in the house," she mouthed to Matteo, her voice a dry rasp. Fear choked her, but a fierce protectiveness ignited within her. She wouldn't let anything happen to him. Matteo's eyes, wide with terror, darted towards the tunnel entrance. Tears welled up, threatening to spill. Elara grabbed his shoulders, her touch surprisingly strong. "We'll be okay," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. "We have to be quiet. Remember what Papa showed us?" Matteo nodded, his lower lip trembling. Elara reached into her backpack, a worn leather satchel she always carried. Inside, nestled amongst scavenged trinkets from a life before the silence, was a well-practiced set of hand signs, a silent language cobbled together by their parents as a means of communication. Using the signs, Elara instructed Matteo to stay hidden while she investigated. Creeping back towards the tunnel entrance, she peeked out, her heart hammering against her ribs. The house was silent, save for the distant echoes of movement from the floor above. Dread coiled in Elara's stomach. The silence was unnatural. It meant the creatures were hunting, their echolocation pulses scanning for prey. She had to get Matteo out of here. Now! Elara scurried back into the chamber, her mind racing. The sound suppressor offered a chance, a narrow window of escape. But how could they get out without alerting the things above? Using hand signs, she relayed the plan to Matteo. It was risky, hinged on a desperate hope that the creatures were preoccupied with their search upstairs. With a deep breath, she shouldered the backpack, the silent suppressor strapped securely to her chest. Taking a flickering oil lamp, Elara extinguished the main one, plunging the chamber back into darkness. She pressed a hand over Matteo's mouth, stifling a whimper as he gripped her arm. In the inky blackness, they crept towards a hidden hatch at the back of the chamber, leading to the labyrinthine network of old ventilation shafts beneath the house. The rusty metal groaned as Elara pried open the hatch, a sound that scraped against her nerves. But there was no turning back. She hoisted Matteo up first, then followed him into the narrow shaft. The air hung heavy with dust and the metallic tang of fear. They inched forward, their bodies scraping against the rough metal walls. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the rasp of their breaths and the frantic thudding of Elara's heart. Each creak and groan echoed in the darkness, a potential death knell. Suddenly, a bone-chilling screech ripped through the silence from above. The floorboards trembled, sending a shower of dust raining down on them. Elara froze, every muscle tensed. The creatures were closing in. Elara held her breath, willing her pounding heart to be silent. The metallic tang of fear flooded her mouth. Below, Matteo whimpered, his tiny hand clutching hers. Panic threatened to consume her, but Elara shoved it down. She had to think, act fast. If the creatures discovered the ventilation shaft, they were trapped. With trembling hands, she reached into her backpack and retrieved a small, dented metal sphere, a flashbang, scavenged from a forgotten military outpost years ago. It was a one-time gamble, a desperate hope for distraction. Using hand signs, Elara instructed Matteo to cover his ears and eyes. Silently mouthing a prayer, she pulled a pin on the flashbang and hurled it upwards, back into the house. A deafening explosion rocked the shaft, the stench of gunpowder stinging Elara's nostrils. The floorboards above groaned in protest, followed by an unearthly shriek that sent shivers down her spine. Elara squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the inevitable retaliation. But instead of the pounding of pursuing creatures, there was an unsettling silence. A tense silence, thick with anticipation. Elara couldn't decipher the silence. Was it a reprieve, or a more sinister prelude? She didn't dare wait to find out. With a surge of adrenaline, she began propelling herself forward through the ventilation shaft, dragging Matteo along. They moved blindly, their pace quickened by a primal fear. The silence stretched after them, broken only by the ragged rasp of their breaths and the scraping sounds of their progress. Every creak and groan echoed in the darkness, a haunting reminder of the danger that lurked above. Would the silence hold? Or would the creatures find them in this metallic tomb? The answer, Elara knew, would determine their fate. The ventilation shafts wound through the house like a metal labyrinth, each twist and turn taking them further away from the terrifying silence above. Elara pushed forward, her muscles burning, her lungs screaming for air. But every groan of the rusty metal, every brush against a protruding bolt, sent a fresh jolt of terror through her. Silence, in this world, was a predator's cloak. Ahead, a faint glow flickered. Hope surged through Elara. An exit? With renewed energy, she propelled herself towards the light, Matteo clinging onto her back like a frightened koala. The passage opened into a dusty crawlspace behind the fireplace. Relief washed over Elara, momentarily blinding her to the danger that might still lurk within the house. Using hand signs, she instructed Matteo to stay put. Inching towards the fireplace, she peeked out into the room. The house was a wreck. Furniture lay overturned, cushions ripped to shreds. The remains of the sound suppressor lay in pieces by the fireplace, a testament to the creature's destructive rage. But the creatures themselves were gone. Silence, thick and heavy, hung in the air. Elara's heart hammered a frantic tattoo against her ribs. Were they truly safe? Or was this just another trick, a predator's lull before the final pounce? She couldn't stay here. With a deep breath, she scooped Matteo into her arms and crawled back into the crawlspace. They needed to get out, to find somewhere safe to wait until they knew for sure the coast was clear. The journey out was arduous, a silent and desperate scramble through the undergrowth that had swallowed the once manicured lawns. But with each step away from the house, a sliver of hope bloomed in Elara's chest. They found refuge in a hidden grove, a small oasis of trees untouched by the encroaching jungle. Collapsing beneath the canopy, Elara finally allowed herself to relax. Mateo snuggled into her side, his grip loosening as exhaustion overcame him. Elara held him close, the rhythm of his shallow breaths a balm to her frayed nerves. As dawn painted the sky with streaks of pink and orange, casting the forest floor in an ethereal glow, Elara knew their ordeal was far from over. The silence was a constant threat, a lurking reminder of the horrors they'd escaped. But for now, huddled together in the fragile embrace of the grove, they had each other. And in that, Elara found a flicker of defiance, a spark of hope that refused to be extinguished. They would survive. They had to.